Welcome to this edition of Rattling the Bars. I'm your host, Mansa Musa. Joining me today via phone and in the studio as well, but via phone is a comrade of mine, Tahaka Gaither. We call it better known as Tahaka. Tahaka is a political prisoner in every sense of the word. Tahaka is a former Black Panther. When we was in the Maryland Penitentiary, we had a collective called the Maryland Penn Intercommunal Survival Collective, which was patterned after the Black Panther Party under the leadership and guidance of Eddie Conway. Tahaka spent a numerous amount of years on lockup for allegedly being involved in an assault on an officer, along with Eddie and 4 other comrades. Tahaka, welcome to Rattling the Bars. Hey, Tahaka, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Like the brother said, my name is Tahaka, and I'm a original member of the original Black Panther Party under leadership of Marshall Eddie Conway, one of the Maryland Penitentiary 5, which included Eddie Conway. So that's my rap buddy, and he, I met Eddie when we first went in the penitentiary around the same time, man, about 54 years ago. And Eddie basically took me. I was a kid, Eddie took me under his wing and he mentored me. You know that. I was his right-hand man the whole time we were there.
That's right.
Yes, indeed. So, I've just been here, like I said, I've been here for like 54 years now, since 1970, trying to get my freedom. And like Mansa Musa said, I am definitely a political prisoner.
You political prisoner every sense of the word. Hey, Tahaka, walk us through those 55 years. More importantly, about where you was at in that process, because we need our audience to understand.
Right.
We need our audience to understand that.
Well,
where you was, what went on during that 55 years.
Okay, well, in 1970, at the age of 19, I entered the Maryland State Penitentiary in East Baltimore. Maximum security prison, the only maximum security prison at the time in the state of Maryland. I was 19 years old, as I said. I went in there with a life sentence, and I was one of the first teenagers in there. Prior to that, it wasn't like it is today, where everywhere you look, it's a bunch of youthful guys, teenagers, 18, 19 years old. Back then, I think it was only one other prisoner in there that was my age. And it was like, coming into the belly of the beast. I had never been into a situation like that before. And and the Maryland Penitentiary at that time was known as one of the most dangerous prisons in the United States.
That's right.
Not just in the state of Maryland. It had a death row. It had a death row tier in there, and death row inmates. Maryland was unique in the fact that, and because you were there, that the death row inmates, they circulated with everybody. They weren't isolated like in other prisons. Some of my nearest and dearest comrades was on there, like Sam Vina.
That's right.
He mentored me. Sam Vina took me under his wing when I first went in there.
That's right.
And Soldier, Gerald Dent, right there with you, my comrades. Yeah. These guys, they raised me up. At that time, when I entered the penitentiary, Eddie Conway was still in Baltimore City Jail, waiting to be tried on the trumped up charges. But they charged him with a shootout with assassinating an officer who wounded another officer. An incident where he wasn't even present at the time, and they railroaded him to get him off the street because of his political influence in the community and his leadership.
That's right.
But he was on city jail at the time, and I was in the penitentiary. So we were waiting on Eddie to come in. When I went in the pen, they had a small cadre of Black Panthers in the penitentiary, and under the leadership of Rob Casaboo folks. We remember Casaboo.
Yes, sir.
And Eddie wrote about him in his book, the Martial Law.
Right.
It was the second book that he wrote, Life of a Baltimore Black Panther. And because Casaboo was running the party at the time. So I had met Eddie prior to coming into penitentiary, he came to my community with a group of pamphlets. They were on a fundraising drive. They were selling Black Panther papers and free Huey buttons and stuff like that. And they came to my neighborhood, and my mother invited them in and gave them some Kool-Aid and some cookies and stuff, and bought some pens and some papers. Right. And that's when I met him, but I wasn't to see him again until after that incident took place. And they had him over there on courtside in Baltimore City Jail. They subsequently railroaded him and found him guilty and gave him a life sentence, something like life in 30 years, and put him in the penitentiary. So his mission at that time was to organize the brothers in the penitentiary. And he took over leadership from Rob Folks. And you know, the rest is history, man. Right. You know, you were there. I remember when you came through.
Yeah, you recruited.
You remember when you came through.
Yeah, you recruited me. You recruited me. You recruited me.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I remember you came.
I remember it like it was yesterday, man.
Yeah. Hey, Tahaka.
Yeah. How old were you?
I was 19 when I came in there. I came in there 2 years after. I came in there, I think, a year after you came in there, or 2 years. Hey, Tahaka.
Yeah, and okay. So I was giving up. Yes, sir.
Nah, okay. Now, you've been locked up all this time, right? Talk about how you was, at one point in time during your incarceration or your imprisonment or enslavement, that you was allowed to go out and be on work release. Talk about that period where you was out working on the street.
Well, all right. Well, what happened, man, was, you know, I stayed in the penitentiary for like 14 and a half years. And during that time, I basically grew up I was 19 years old when I went in. But, you know, the Black Panther Party always taught us to seek higher education. So, you know, I got my GED. I went to college. I got my bachelor's of science degree in sociology. And I went up for transfer from maximum security, trying to get to medium security. But the warden said that as long as I was in the college program, he was going to keep me there until I graduated. So I wound up staying almost 15 years. I graduated from Coppin State University with a bachelor's of science degree, and they sent me, after 14 and a half years, they sent me to the Maryland House of Correction, which is medium security.
Right.
So I progressed from maximum to medium. So that was in 1984. I went into pen in 1970 and 1984. They finally transferred me to the Maryland House of Correction, medium security institution. And I went in there, and you know, the House of Correction, the cut, as it was called at the time, they torn it down since then. You know, they had a reputation in there too. That was a very tough prison. You know, but at this time, I mean, I grew up in the penitentiary, so everybody basically knew who I was. They knew me. And I went in there and I started programming in medium security, trying to get to minimum security. So, and eventually they sent Eddie Conway down there with me. We were in there together. And we were running a self-help organization called Sounds Incorporated. And after 5 years in the Maryland House of Correction under medium security, they transferred me to minimum security, and I went to just a pre-release unit. So I went from maximum to medium to minimum. And so in 1984 to the cut, and in 1989 is when I went to the pre-release system. Stayed in the pre-release system for 4.5 years, from 84 to 89 when I made a work release status in pre-release. And I was basically on the street, man. I was coming out every day going to work. I started working on the road through and, you know, putting trash and trimming trees and doing all this stuff, you know, on the highway stuff. And finally, they reduced my sentence. Well, they didn't reduce my sentence, but they reduced my status from minimum security to pre-release. And I received work release, which is the highest status you can get in the pre-release system.
Right.
So, yes, sir.
All right, now. Okay, so we're talking, but this base, I just wanted the audience to get a nice overview of you. so they can understand who you are as a person, and more importantly, who you are as a man. But this show is primarily about Father's Day, and I got your lovely daughter here, Tyra, who is your wingman, so to speak.
Yes, sir.
Every time I would tell Tyra, I say, every time I'm trying to do something for you or around you, I say, I'll call one of your family members, right? And they'll say, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I got somebody. And they'll put Tyra. And then look, Tyra might be, yeah, Tyra might be on, look, Tyra might be getting ready to work. Tyra might be, look, you'll say, we was on the phone, they say, Tyra, can you come in? She say, when? This time, she be like, you can hear calculating in her head. Well, yeah, I'm going to take off. Yeah, because of her father. But Tahaka, talk about how old was Tyra when you left the street?
Hey, Master Booster, when I left the street, Tyra was one. She was 1 year old. She was 1 year old, man, and the sweetest little girl, man, and it just broke my heart to have to leave her and her mother and coming to the prison system. But I had no control over it. But she was one.
And look,
one thing I can tell you, man, my mother. You know my mother.
Oh, I already know.
My mother before, right?
Yeah, your mother was a soldier. Your mother was a soldier. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Hey.
So my mother would bring Tyra every week to see me.
That's right.
Room.
Yeah. And look, I remember when you used to talk about it when like I was down to cut with y'all for a minute till I tried to escape. But I remember every time we was around each other, right? Or because we comrades, we like we family for real. We be talking about each other, and I remember you used to always talk.
We definitely proud.
I remember you used to always talk about Tyra. Hey, Tahaka, you proud of Tyra?
Oh man, I'm proud of my daughter, man. She's beautiful. She grew up to be an outstanding young lady. She's beautiful. Her morals are tight. She raised her family. She has 2 beautiful daughters, and she raised them. And each of her daughters had 4 children. She helped to raise them, and the family is just beautiful. She held the family together, and she's been by me. She's been by my side the whole time. Like I said, my mother would bring her every week after church. She would bring her without fail to visit me, And anytime we had a function or social or something at the prison, Tyra was there. And when she started having children, she brought her children. And when her children started having children, they brought them. So you're talking like 3 generations.
Oh,
Tyra, her girl, her children, and her grandchildren. All 3 generations were raised up coming to these prisons to see Papa.
That's right. Hey, Tyra.
We have a strong family.
Hey, Tyra, I got it right
Yes,
here.
sir.
Look, she look like she getting ready to cry too. Look. Hey, Tyra. Talk about.
You better not cry.
Okay.
We don't do no crying.
Talk about your father just said, that your grandmother, which I knew, matter of fact, your grandmother was like, we call your grandmother the collective mother. I mean, seriously, because like every time we got packages, she would bring like, whoever couldn't afford, family ain't afford no package, she would give packages, she would make sure Tahaka had more than enough stuff, and basically we always broke down and shared, but she was always in that space.
That's right.
As far as like, we call her the collective mother. Talk about that, right? About that experience of your grandmother bringing you over to see your father and all those years. What kind of impact did that have on you?
I think that if it weren't for my grandmother, that I would not have the relationship and bond with my father that I have, because she was bringing me to the penitentiary. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew that I was going to see my father, and I knew that, when back then, when you look at the penitentiary, it just looked to me like a big old castle.
Yeah, that's right.
So I thought, that I was going to this big, I can remember sliding down the brass staircase when I was little.
Right.
But if it wasn't for my grandmother, I owe a whole lot to my grandmother for keeping me in contact and making sure that I knew who my father was and that I had a bond with him.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he also talked about, and that right there, if you pass that on, that became like a thing with your children to make sure they knew who their grandfather was. Why was that important?
It was just a natural thing that to me, that this is my father, and this is my children's grandfather, so they ought to be just as tight with him as I am. And the same thing with my grandchildren. I brought my grandchildren when they were first born to see my father,
Yeah.
and and so my grandchildren know who Pop Pop is, even
Right.
down to the youngest, the 2-year-old.
Right.
She knows who Pop Pop is.
And Tyra, Tahaka talked about how long he'd been locked up, and the fact that at one point in time he was actually going out on the street. When he was going that back and forth on the street, did y'all have contact?
We were in contact. I actually was coming. I never stopped going to visit him. I was actually coming up to Jessup Pre-Release Unit to visit my dad. So, yeah, I was seeing him. I don't remember a time in my life that no matter where he was, even when he had been to Hagerstown, that I didn't see him.
Right.
If I was old enough to drive, I knew how to get in the car and turn the key and get up the highway.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
All right. And for the benefit of our audience, Tahaka, yeah, they get ready to cut you off, right?
Yeah, they get ready to cut me off, man.
Okay.
But I just want to say, man, I want to thank y'all for this Father's Day program, man. It means a lot to me, as well as all the other guys in here that know about it. I told them what was going on, man. They love you and they respect you, bro. But Tara, God bless you, and you always.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
We got a saying, every day is Mother's Day, every day is Father's Day. You understand? We don't just wait one time a year to celebrate.
That's right.
All right, man.
All right,
so
comrade.
Carry on, man. Musa, God bless you, man.
All right, comrade. Yeah. And Tyra, look.
All right, I love you, man. Soldier, I love you, Soldier.
All right. Love you too, comrade.
Tara, you be good. You be safe.
I will.
I'll talk to you later, Tara.
Okay.
And Tyra, like you say, now he can ready to go on. But let's talk about how your father, your impact your father had, and we know, because he even by his own admission, he already say how he feel about, so that's no question about how he view you and your growth and your maturation and your coming into your womanhood. Talk about how he influenced the person you are today. Because remember, he said like you was 1 year old? So talk about that experience, the influence he has on you to be the woman that you are today. What type of influence did he have on you?
Large impact, basically, because after a certain time, my grandmother wasn't taking me to see my father, but I still had it, a desire in me to have a relationship with him. So even as a teenager, as soon as I was able to get in by myself, I was there.
Yeah.
And it was important and it was a time in the middle, when I was older and on the weekends I wanted to be with my friends or whatever. So I wasn't always at my grandmother's house. So that was at the point where it was really important because he never left me.
Right.
Because he continued I was getting them phone calls and sometimes I can remember when my father was in the cut, we would talk on the phone all day. Like just chilling, sit back on a summer day.
I remember.
Chilling, talking to my dad, and I have the kind of relationship with him where I can tell him anything,
right?
And he can tell me anything. So it was important to be able to have that bond. It's important to be able to have. Every child needs a father.
Yeah.
And I needed my father, and I seen some stats where it said that. Children that grow up with their fathers incarcerated, it affects them more than if their parent were dead, and that's some serious stuff, right there.
Yeah.
But it's up to you what you want it to be.
And that that right there, that's the part of this system that is designed to do that. It's designed to create that mentality in the family that if your loved one is on the plantation. Talking about he dead or she dead, but the fact that by your own admission and the reality is that he never left you because he like he said on early say it hurt him when he left, when he got locked up. It hurt him to have to leave you. But so that right there drove him to say that no matter what, I'm gonna make sure that my daughter know that I'm a father. I'm gonna make sure that my daughter know that treat me like your father. Look at me like I'm your father. Don't look at me where I'm at. Look at me as your parent under these circumstances. And in terms of like that right there, what do you tell other children of parents that are incarcerated? What do you tell them that might be struggling with that? What do you tell them? Because you're an example of what to do or how to maintain or how to process it. You're an example of that.
The sad realization of being a person whose parent is incarcerated is that when you realize that it's generational. As Black people, right now we're striving for generational wealth.
Yeah.
Okay, it's this thing out about generational wealth, how to get generational wealth, but we don't understand that incarceration is generational.
Right.
I have a brother. My brother has a son. My brother has been incarcerated. We just recently found out yesterday that my nephew may be going away for a long time. You know, it is something. It is important that people know that children need their parents regardless, no matter wherever they are, whatever they did. The parenthood is so needed. It's so needed. Just remember that they say that out of every 8 children, 1 of those children has an incarcerated parent. It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's a lot of children. And then, you get to the road. Are you going to go this way or are you going to go that way?
Right.
A lot of that depends on what you're getting from your parent that is incarcerated. A lot of it.
Yeah.
So my father was feeding me. What about your grades?
Right.
It's all about doing right. What are you up to? Keep it in contact with me. On some of them hot summer days when I could have been out in the street doing anything, I was on the phone talking to my dad.
Right. And you know what? And that right there, what you just said, that's the genesis right there. That is the line in the saying. What the parent that's incarcerated do with the children. How they and I had 2 people coming here interview prior to you, and both of them, one was incarcerated dad, he out, and that one was a woman much like yourself whose father was still locked up. But all of them had the same, going back to your point, everybody had the same perspective. He was in touch with his children while he was locked up. He made sure that he had access to them by phone. The father or the young lady, much like yourself, they got the kind of relationship that y'all will be mirror images. If y'all run y'all stories side by side, y'all be mirror images in terms of how much the parent that's incarcerated made sure that they stayed in touch with their children. And this would give me, talk about, maybe you want to talk about it. Why do you think the system don't encourage that? Why do you think the prison system is so hell bent on, making you feel uncomfortable when you come to visit? If you had to come to Hagerstown, okay, I'm gonna make it where you come, but I'm gonna make it where it's be so uncomfortable when you come and see, like you doing something wrong by seeing your family, or I'm gonna make it like, you get there, then I'm gonna say we're visiting hours over. You only been there 5 minutes, and what do you mean to visit? Well, something happened. Why do you think the system is so hell bent on stopping that and not encouraging that?
That's a good question, because I was in a computer and I was looking up stats, and I was like, I can't believe they got all these stats. They know how many children have incarcerated parents. They know out of the children who had incarcerated parents, how many ended up incarcerated. They know the effects that having incarcerated parents has on a child. They have all of this information. But I couldn't find anywhere where they did anything positive with it.
Yeah.
So I sat back and wondered to myself, well, maybe they wanted the information because they wanted to use it against us. I don't see anybody doing anything with that information to help any children that have incarcerated parents, whole families. I was the only child for my mother.
Right.
But you have families where men with multiple children, that nobody's doing anything for these kids. I have any idea. I'm going to tell you, I have been to just about every visiting room in the state of Maryland. And let me tell you, the officers need to be have sensitivity training.
Yeah.
They need to be trained because they have a way of looking down on you.
Yeah.
Like you are lower than them. And like a lot of things that you want to say to them, you can't say because you're not going to get your visit.
Yeah.
You know, but it is amazing how they treat the families and the children. I had one of my grandkids with me. I took her to see my father, and she had barrettes in her hair. They made me take her barrettes out of her hair. Family day. She told me I couldn't take the bottle in. I could take the pamper in. What I'm going to do with a baby? This was recently.
Yeah.
Last family day they had up there. What am I going to do with an infant with no bottle?
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, this is ridiculous. I've been coming up here since I was this age. You're not going to tell me she can't have a bottle. She can have a bottle.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, all my grandkids have been up there. So it depends on the government. These people that are running these institutions, they need to do something about it, because what they don't realize is that the more communication and time that people have with their families kind of tones them down a little bit. Because we have a lot of problems in those facilities. If you bring the parents closer to their children, they have a reason to have hope and a reason to want to come out and do better. But if you keep them separated and the baby's mother doesn't want to come up because she don't want to go through this and she doesn't want to go through that, it just makes the whole matter worse.
And talk about this, and since we're doing this Father's Day show, how did you process Father's Day, every Father's Day? How did you process it, if you can recall?
For most of my life, on every Father's Day, I was on either the highway or going somewhere to see my dad. Most Father's Day, it got to a point where the prison stopped letting you send cards. Greetings cards. So now I'm at the point where it's just like I can't even send him a greetings card. Because
they don't allow it. I know.
But Father's Day to me and Mother's Day have always been pretty much the same. I spend Mother's Day with my mother, and I spend Father's Day with my father.
And that's the other part of this narrative, because I was locked up 48 years, and me and your father, like I said, that's my comrade. He outlined that early. He recruited me when I was on down now. So both of us looked alike. Both of us was young, red, and big bushes. Right, so we look matter of fact, we look almost like twins.
I'm sure.
And he recruited me, and in terms of like recognizing in that environment how many parents, how many people have children that's in that environment, and how many children, that don't have that ability to see their parents. But we created Family Day. See, we created what they call function. We created them. We created Family Days, and we created. One where you had, one time you said, like, with Letta Dawson, we created one where they said, like, okay, before we created what is known as Family Day, one organization would create for their program, they said, like, we have children, a parent can come in and bring their children, right? So it's always been for us. And this, I'll go on record and say this is out throughout the United States. It's always been for us. Those of us that's in conflict always have access to the community, always have access to our family, always have access to people, because we want to hold on to our humanity. Right. It's them that's trying to take our humanity. Yeah. It's the system that's like depriving us of our humanity. And for those of us that they can't process that and don't see that, much like your father who can, 55 years, They stalling him out on parole, but yet he still got hope. Yet he still stay. He's the same person.
Same
He
person.
not. He's still on the phone. He's still talking. He's still being the parent that he is, being whoever he is in y'all family's life, being Papa. He's still being that because he's not giving up hope. But as we close out, what do you want our audience to know or our viewers to know about your father and what we can do or what we should be doing to try to get him some relief?
I don't know if everybody heard it, but my father said that when he was incarcerated, he was 19 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I was a 1-year-old. I am 55 years old. And I can't think of anything that I did as a teenager when I was 19 years old that I deserve to be punished for right now.
Yeah, for 55 years.
For 55 years.
Yeah, come on.
Because I'm the same person, but I'm not the same person.
That's right.
Because when I was 19 years old, I was a 19-year-old.
Yeah, that's right, Tyra.
You know what I'm saying? I was doing what 19-year-olds do. And I wasn't exactly thinking the way a 55-year-old woman thinks. I can't understand that my father is 72 years old, has been incarcerated since he was 19 years old, has come out and worked on the street and never caused anybody any problems, hasn't done anything to hurt anyone, educated himself, because he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to go to school.
Right.
He could have had, he could have just sat there and, could have, figured out some trouble to make or something like that. Right. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of things that we need to look at when we are holding people for so long. And it's over incarceration. It's over punishment. And it hurts the community.
That's right.
Because my grandfather has sons out in the community. He has grandsons out in the community. And they're having children. And he is the patriarch. Since 19 years old. And he is the one person that could put his hand out and say, listen, you don't want to do that.
Right.
You don't want to do that. I've been there. Let me tell you what it's like. Let me show you a better way. But like I said, incarceration is now generational. So we need to save ourselves. Sometimes in order to save ourselves, we got to speak up.
Yeah.
And we got to say, this is the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do. Let that man come home. Let him be with his family. Let him have contact with the young men that are in the family. So because if maybe one of them might be going a little bit this way, maybe he can guide them the right way.
That's right.
And keep them out of trouble. But to me, a 19-year-old and a 72-year-old.
Yeah, they don't jail. Yeah.
What is that?
And we want to remind our audience that, we're talking about someone who was locked up at 19 years old. Science already came out and say that at the age of between 16, 19, 24, you don't have the memory or the mental capacity to have an adult make an adult decision, regardless of what they say the age is. And science came out and said this, and now that the Supreme Court then came out and said that because of that, you have to evaluate people in this age bracket differently. But more importantly, we're talking to Tahaka Gaither, Tahaka daughter, better known as, his real name is Thomas Gaither, but we call him Tahaka. We're talking to her about her father. She was 1 year old when he got locked up. 55 years later, she's 55. What we want our audience to understand about this particular episode is this is a remarkable individual. One, he was out working on the street while he was locked up. They closed down the system that he was under because of something they did, not because of something he did. Number two, he's an accomplished musician. He can go anywhere and play with any band anywhere in the world. without missing a note. He's an accomplished musician. That's number 2. He graduated from Coppin. He got his bachelor's degree. But more importantly, he has served 55 years. What more do you want from this man? We ask that you look into this case. We ask that you research this case. And we ask that you come to your senses about what you would do if you was locked up 55 years for something that you did at the age of 19. And the suspect is whether you did it or not, but at the age of 19 when it happened. We ask that you continue to look in this case and continue to support Thomas Gaither. Tyra, thank you for coming and joining us today. We really appreciate you taking your time out to give us some insight to your father.
And thank you for having me. Yeah, anytime that I can, let people know what's going on, I'm right there with it. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and there you have it, the real news, Rattling the Bars. We ask that you continue to support Rattling the Bars, because it's only through Rattling the Bars that you get this kind of information about Thomas Gaither, better known as Tahaka, or have his daughter come here and express the influence that he has on her and the generations. She talked about generational incarceration, but he has been able to break that cycle in her family by being a positive influence in his child's family. And he could also be a positive influence in other people's family and be a mentor. So you only get this information from Rattling the Bar. And by the way, as far as the real news, guess what? We're actually the real news.
Thank you so much for watching the Real News Network, where we lift up the voices, stories, and struggles that you care about most. And we need your help to keep doing this work. So please, tap your screen now, subscribe, and donate to the Real News Network. Solidarity forever.